ทวิปัสสนานังภาวนานามิโตปารังกรรมฐานังภวคามิทุวิธัมปิยถากัปมัง
Have you ever wished you could just step back in time, not just to see history, but to actually walk the path of someone truly legendary and feel what they might have felt? Well, today that's exactly what we're going to do. We're setting out on a virtual pilgrimage, retracing the most critical steps in the life of the Buddha.
And here's our guide for this incredible journey. This book, Pujaniya Sutta Paritta. Now, this is way more than just a book of scriptures. For us, it's our map. It's a visual and spiritual guide that follows the Buddha's path, and it's going to be our main source for this entire explain.
So, that really brings up the big question, right? How can we, living now, really connect with a journey that happened more than 2,500 years ago? How do we get a sense of the real weight and wonder of these ancient events?
Well, the answer is right here, inside the book itself. It gives us this incredible map, and it's not just about geography, it's a map of moments. Every single location you see here is a crucial stop on the path to enlightenment. So let's start our pilgrimage.
Okay, our first stop is where the whole story gets started, a place of just immense significance. We're traveling to Lumbini, the birthplace of the man who would become the Buddha, Prince Siddhartha Gautama.
So, the tradition tells us that his mother, Queen Maya, was on her way from her home in Kapilavastu to visit her parents. But on the way, she stopped to rest in the beautiful Lumbini Grove, and right there, under a sal tree, Prince Siddhartha was born, finishing the exact journey we can trace on this map.
Today, Lumbini is just massive.
It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's buzzing with energy from monasteries and pilgrims from all over the globe. And right at its heart, you see the Maya Devi Temple, named for the Buddha's mother, built to protect the sacred spot of his birth.
If you go inside that temple, you get to the absolute core of it all. You'll find this stone marker protected under glass, and it's revered as the precise spot where the prince was born. It's amazing to think, a single point on the earth where a journey that would change the world began.
And get this, it's said that right after he was born, the baby took 7 steps, and a voice that seemed to fill the universe declared these incredible words, basically forecasting his own destiny. I mean, what a start. It really sets the stage for the next monumental chapter in his life. So, from the beginning of a life, we now jump ahead to the beginning of a whole new kind of understanding. After leaving behind his palace and all its luxuries, Siddhartha set out on a quest to figure out what causes suffering and how to end it. And that quest led him here, to Bodh Gaya.
Having given up his old life, Siddhartha traveled as an ascetic, learning from different teachers. This map follows his path from the city of Rajgir to an area they called Uruvela back then. We call it Bodh Gaya now. This is the place that was going to change everything.
For 6 long years. In caves just like these, in the Dungeshwari Hills, Siddhartha pushed his body to the absolute limit. I mean, he practiced these extreme forms of self-denial, thinking that that was the way to find freedom. But in the end, he realized that torturing the body just doesn't bring peace to the mind. It wasn't the answer. This right here, this was a huge turning point. He was emaciated, close to death, and a local village girl named Sujata offered him a simple bowl of milk rice. Accepting it, that was a huge deal. It was him abandoning those extreme practices and discovering what he later called the middle way, a balanced path, right between luxury and self-torture. So with his strength back, he sat down under a peepal tree, what we now know as the Bodhi tree, and he made a vow. He would not get up until he found the answers he was looking for. And through a whole night of intense meditation, he faced down all of his inner demons, and just as the morning star rose, he did it. He achieved supreme enlightenment. He wasn't Prince Siddhartha anymore. He was the Buddha, the awakened one.
Enlightenment wasn't just some flash in the pan. It was a deep realization that the Buddha actually spent weeks just absorbing. For the first week, he stayed in blissful meditation right there under the tree. For the second week, he just stood and gazed at the tree, full of gratitude. The third week, he spent in walking meditation. And in the fourth, he stayed in a jeweled chamber just thinking through the deep philosophy of the Dhamma. the universal laws he'd uncovered.
And the power of that moment, it still echoes today. You can see pilgrims from every corner of the world who come here to meditate under a descendant of that original Bodhi tree right next to the incredible Mahabodhi temple. It's a living, breathing connection to an event from 2,500 years ago.
So after reaching enlightenment, the Buddha's next move wasn't to just sit back and enjoy it. It was to share what he'd found for the good of everyone. And the first people he thought of were his 5 old friends, the ascetics he used to practice with. He knew they'd be able to grasp the truth he'd discovered. So off he went on another long journey. He walked over 240 kilometers, that's about 150 miles, from Bodh Gaya to the deer park at Sarnath. Can you imagine that walk? But this time he was driven by a totally new purpose, to set the wheel of Dharma in motion.
And here's what Sarnath looks like today. On the left, you see the peaceful ruins of the ancient monasteries that eventually grew up around this sacred place. And on the right, you see the massive Dhammik stupa, a huge monument that's believed to mark the exact spot where the Buddha gave his very first teaching.
Now, his audience was tiny. It was just those 5 friends. And at first, they were pretty skeptical, you know? They kind of looked down on him for giving up their harsh practices. But as he got closer, there was something so serene and radiant about him that they just had to listen. And what he taught them became the absolute bedrock of all Buddhist traditions, the 4 Noble Truths. He laid it all out, the truth of suffering, or dukkha, the truth of where that suffering comes from, or samudaya, the truth that suffering can actually end, or nirodha, and finally, the truth of the path that leads to its end, or magga. This was it, the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. So from his birth, to his enlightenment, to his very first teaching, we followed this incredible map through time. But this journey isn't just something stuck in a history book. It's a living path that people are still walking today.
And this is what it's all about. People still make this journey. They travel to these sacred sites, not just as tourists, but as pilgrims. They come to meditate, to reflect, and to try and connect with the same wisdom that first bloomed in these very spots. It's a real, tangible link to a timeless search for peace.
You know, we've only hit 3 major stops on this incredible pilgrimage, and we've been guided by the structure of the Pujaniya Sutta Paritta. But the Buddha's path went on for another 45 years. The book, our guide for this whole explainer, it maps out so much more. So the journey really does continue, not just in the past, but for anyone who wants to walk it. And that leaves us with a final question. What will you discover on your path?
พระผู้มีพระภาคเจ้าพระองค์ใดทรงพระคุณครบตัวล้วนแล้วด้วยความงามทุกสิ่งลวงเสียซึ่งความงามของโลกทั้งปวงทรงพ้นจากกิเลสมนทินเป็นเครื่องประทุษร้ายพร้อมทั้งวาสนาทรงประทานวิมุตติธรรมอันล้ำเลิศพระองค์ทรงมีพระทัยเยือกเย็นดุจความเย็นแห่งไม้จันทร์กล่าวคือพระกรุณาอยู่เป็นนิจทรงพระปัญญาโชติช่วงดังดวงระวีมีธรรมเป็นเครื่องแนะนำสัตว์ข้าพเจ้าขอน้อมอภิวาทพระผู้มีพระภาคเจ้าพระองค์นั้นซึ่งเป็นผู้เลิศในหมู่สัตว์ผู้เป็นที่พึ่งในประโยชน์แก่ปวงสัตว์ด้วยเสียงกล่าวพระภาคเจ้าพระองค์ใดทรงพระคุณครอบตัวล้วนแล้วด้วยความงามทุกสิ่งลวงเสียซึ่งความงามของโลกทั้งปวงทรงพ้นจากกิเลสมนทินเป็นเครื่องประทุษร้ายพร้อมทั้งวาสนาทรงประทานวิมุตติธรรมอันล้ำเลิศพระองค์ทรงมีพระทั อกเย็นด้วยความเย็นแห่งไม้จันทร์กล่าวคือพระกรุ